It's not a return, kind of is because she could have went pro. So the return of Paige Bueckers is kind of front page news, to use an older term, in the women's basketball lexicon.
What happens when one of the most hyped players in women's college basketball history disappears for over a year? And then, just when everyone starts to move on, she comes back, not just healthy, but hungrier, sharper, and ready to reclaim her throne. That's exactly what we're witnessing with Paige Bueckers. She wasn't just a star, she was the star. The kind of player ESPN runs breaking news for. The kind of player whose highlight passes get millions of views in hours. And then, torn ACL, season gone, another one gone. UConn's title hopes on life support. But now, she's back. And in just a few games, she's already flipping the entire women's basketball landscape upside down. This isn't just a comeback. This could be the defining chapter in her career, and maybe even the turning point for UConn's entire dynasty.
For the UConn Huskies, the answer isn't about finding the next Paige Bueckers. Instead, it's a deliberate strategic pivot back to a different philosophy, a system that prizes the collective over the individual.
In today's deep dive, we're going to break down exactly how Paige has transformed UConn's offense in just weeks, the behind-the-scenes work she put in to not just recover, but come back better, why her return is more than just a feel-good story. It's a high-stakes gamble for Gino Auriemma's championship window. We'll look at the numbers, the film, the rivals breathing down UConn's neck, and the ripple effect she's already having on the national title race. And of course, the big question, is Paige Bueckers really enough to bring UConn back to the top? So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Paige Bueckers can lead UConn to another national championship this year? Drop your predictions in the comments. Hit that like button if you love seeing her back on the court, and make sure you're subscribed to Her Hoops so you don't miss our next breakdown. To understand why Paige's return matters so much, we've got to rewind to where this all started. Back in 2021, Paige Bueckers wasn't just another freshman phenom. She was the face of women's college basketball. She came into UConn as the #1 recruit in the nation, and she delivered immediately. We're talking 19 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds per game as a freshman, a Naismith Player of the Year award, a trip to the Final Four, all before she could even legally rent a car. Her game wasn't just about numbers, though. Paige had that rare mix of court vision and killer instinct that made her feel like a combination of Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi. Every pass, every pull-up jumper felt like a highlight. Crowds didn't just watch her play, they anticipated her every move. But here's the thing about college basketball. Dynasties can crumble in an instant. For UConn, that moment came in December 2021. Paige went down with a knee injury. She came back briefly in the spring, but then disaster struck. Summer 2022. Torn ACL in her left knee during a casual pickup game. Entire season gone.
Since her return, Buckets has tied Maya Moore as the fastest player in UConn history to reach 1,000 career points, doing so in 55 games. In the regular season, she had her best season yet, as she averaged 21.9 points on 53% shooting, 5.2 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 2.2 steals, and 1.4 blocks.
Paige, tonight you became the second fastest WNBA player to score 500 points, 100 assists, 100 rebounds. I think all year you've shown that you're ultimate team player, but at what point can you kind of look back and reflect on the year about what you've done?
It's hard to reflect when you're in the middle of it, because you're just so focused on what every day looks like for you, and that's never, as a team, it's never how many points are you going to score, it's how can we contribute to winning on any given night, whether it's 0 points or 10 points or 20 points, whatever that may be.
Suddenly, UConn went from having the most dangerous backcourt in the country to scrambling just to stay in the Final Four conversation. They still had talent, sure, but without Paige, the offense slowed down, the chemistry shifted, and their margin for error evaporated. For the next year and a half, it was rehab, and more rehab. No games, no highlights, just hours in the gym, rebuilding her body and reworking her game.
Paige felt a searing pain in her right knee as she planted her foot to change direction. An MRI revealed a tibial plateau fracture accompanied by a significant meniscus tear. The diagnosis landed like a gut punch. The fractures to the
And now, after 600+ days without real game action, Paige is back. And she's not easing in. She's already proving she's the same elite player, and maybe even a smarter one. Here's the truth. Paige Bueckers being back doesn't automatically mean UConn is back. That's the core problem. Yes, she's a generational talent. Yes, she's an instant upgrade to their offense. But the women's college basketball landscape in 2025 is brutal. Think about it. While Paige was rehabbing, other programs weren't just waiting around. South Carolina kept building Dawn Staley's juggernaut. LSU went full super team mode with Angel Reese, Haley Van Lith, and Flau'jae Johnson. Iowa's Caitlin Clark basically became a walking NCAA record book. The gap between UConn and the rest of the field didn't just close. In some cases, it flipped. And it's not just the competition. UConn has its own internal battles. This team has dealt with constant injuries. Ozzie Fudd, Caroline Ducharme, even Aaliyah Edwards have all missed time. The starting lineup has been a revolving door. That kind of instability kills chemistry. So Paige comes back, but she's stepping into a team that's been in survival mode for 2 seasons. The offense she left isn't the same one she's returning to. New roles, new habits, and players who had to become the go-to in her absence. Here's where it gets tricky. When you have a star like Paige, it's tempting to just hand her the keys again. Let her dominate the ball, run the offense, take the big shots. But if you do that too fast, you risk undoing the development of everyone else who stepped up. If you don't do it enough, you're not fully using the player who could take you to a title. This is the needle Gino Auriemma has to thread, maximizing Paige without breaking the fragile chemistry that's kept UConn relevant. And make no mistake, other teams are licking their chops, ready to test whether Paige's return is a blessing or a distraction. If UConn can't figure this out fast, the consequences just for this season, not just for this season, but for the entire program's identity. Let's be real, UConn is not used to being just another contender. For 2 decades, they've been the standard. 11 national championships, 14 straight Final Fours, seasons where disappointment meant only making the Elite 8. But the last title? 2016. That's almost a decade ago. In sports years, that's an eternity. Long enough for an entire generation of recruits to grow up without seeing UConn cut down the net.
The scary part, the longer that drought lasts, the harder it is to break. Dawn Staley is dominating recruiting. Kim Mulkey is pulling in talent with NIL deals and championship rings. Even programs like Stanford, Indiana, and Virginia Tech are climbing the rankings with top 10 recruiting classes. If Paige can't lead this team deep into March, there's a very real possibility UConn starts slipping from dynasty to legacy program. Still respected, still dangerous, but no longer feared. And it's not just about the program's reputation. For Paige herself, this is a legacy year. She's draft eligible. She could leave for the WNBA after this season. If she comes back and UConn falls short, there will be questions. Was she ever fully back to her freshman form? Can she carry a team at the highest level? But if she delivers, if she leads UConn to a title in her comeback season, that's a story that cements her in the same breath as Maya Moore, Brianna Stewart, and Diana Taurasi. The stakes don't get much higher than that for both the player and the program, and the clock is ticking. If Paige and UConn want to climb back to the top, they've got to get through a minefield of elite teams, and each one poses a completely different challenge. First up, South Carolina. Even without Aaliyah Boston, Dawn Staley has reloaded with size, depth, and relentless defense. They swarm passing lanes, they dominate the boards, and they've got a rotation deep enough to survive foul trouble, something UConn can't match right now. Paige will have to pick apart one of the most disciplined defensive units in the country if UConn wants a shot in March. Then there's LSU, the flashy super team. Angel Reese in the paint, Flau'jae attacking from the wing, Haley Van Lith running the perimeter. They don't just beat you with talent, they beat you with swagger. UConn hasn't faced a team that thrives on chaos quite like LSU. Paige will have to keep her composure while LSU tries to turn the game into a track meet. And of course, Iowa. Caitlin Clark versus Paige Bueckers. That's the matchup women's basketball fans have been dreaming about. Clark is a one-woman scoring avalanche. She's breaking assist records while casually hitting logo threes. If UConn meets Iowa in the tournament, Paige can't just have a good game. She'll have to match Clark shot for shot and get her teammates rolling. But here's the thing. Gino Auriemma does have options. UConn doesn't have to win every game with Paige doing everything. Aaliyah Edwards can dominate inside. Ozzie Fudd, when healthy, is one of the purest shooters in the game. If Gino can stagger minutes and keep all three fresh, UConn could hit opponents with a three-headed monster on offense. The question is, does UConn lean fully into Paige as the engine, or do they use her return as a chance to spread the load and make them less predictable? Because with the talent out there this year, a one-dimensional UConn won't survive deep into March. Now here's the part we don't always see in the box score, the human side. When a star player like Paige comes back after nearly 2 years, there's an emotional ripple through the locker room. Teammates are excited, sure. They've missed her leadership, her playmaking, and let's be real, her ability to bail the team out in crunch time. But there's also an adjustment period that can get awkward. Think about it. Players like Nika Mule, Aaliyah Edwards, and even Ozzie Fudd, when healthy, have been carrying the weight. They've been the go-to options, the leaders in huddles, the ones the offense ran through. Now, suddenly, Paige is back, and the hierarchy shifts overnight. That can create tension, even if no one says it out loud. Some players might have to take fewer shots. Others might have to slide back into secondary roles. That's not easy after you've been the star for 2 seasons. And from Paige's perspective, she's coming back to a team that's different. Chemistry isn't something you just flip on like a light switch. She has to earn back that in-game trust. She has to prove that not only is she physically ready, but that she's still the leader who can unify the group. The locker room right now is probably a mix of optimism and uncertainty. If Paige can smooth that out quickly, UConn becomes dangerous. If not, all that talent could get stuck in neutral. So what does this all lead to? In my eyes, there are 3 possible endings to Paige Bueckers' comeback season. Best case scenario, Paige returns to near freshman form. UConn stays healthy, and Gino finds the perfect balance between his stars. They run the table in the Big East, roll into March with momentum, and Paige leads them to their first national title since 2016. That's the fairy tale ending, and it would instantly cement Paige as one of the greatest to ever wear a Huskies jersey. Middle ground, Paige plays great. UConn makes the Final Four, but falls short against a deeper, more athletic roster like South Carolina or LSU. The season is still a success, but the questions about whether UConn's dynasty days are truly over linger into next year. Worst case scenario, injuries creep back in, chemistry issues never fully settle, and UConn exits the tournament earlier than expected. Paige faces a tough decision: declare for the WNBA and start fresh, or return for one last shot at redemption. Either way, the program faces another off-season of soul-searching. This season isn't just about Paige Bueckers coming back. It's about whether UConn can reclaim the fear factor that once defined them, or if we're truly watching the end of an era. The beauty of sports is that nothing is guaranteed. One moment you're a dynasty, the next you're fighting to prove you still belong in the conversation. So I want to hear from you. Do you think Paige Bueckers can lead UConn back to the top of women's college basketball this season? Or will the injuries, the competition, and the weight of expectation be too much? Drop your take in the comments, hit that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, and make sure you're subscribed to Her Hoops for more deep dives into the biggest stories in the game. Because trust me, this Paige Bueckers story is just getting started.